It's good to have you on the Inspiring Leaders podcast. And I'm sure you know this already. You're one of my favorite people. I tell you this all the time. And the reason is really because you're one of the first leaders that I had right after grad school. And working with you really had a great impact on how I choose to show up as a leader today. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and learn about you as an individual, learn about your leadership journey, learn about your thoughts on leadership and how leaders can influence organizations to actually make great impact in our society. So, Rishi, it's so great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Jimmy. This is fantastic, right? Thank you for spending some time with me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Great. So let's dig right into it. So, from your perspective, when you think about leadership, what comes to mind? What does leadership mean to you?
So I think it's a big word, right? Like leadership is a big word, but to me, it's really getting individuals and teams to be something greater than just themselves, right? So we as individuals bring a lot of things, but when we attach ourselves to a team, to a greater purpose, we are able to have an impact that is greater than each of us individually. And that sum of impact that we are able to have is really what leadership means to me. It's about enabling teams and enabling us as individuals to achieve something that we couldn't have done by ourselves individually.
That's a really great definition of leadership. And hopefully, as we have this conversation, we can dive into what that really means and how you've actually lived that out in the organizations you've led, in the teams you've built over time. Maybe we take a few steps back to just understand how did you frame or determine your leadership values and framework in terms of how you choose to show up as a leader? Were there individuals that influenced you early on? And who are those and how did they influence just how you choose to show up?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, right? So a couple of different people. I don't think this is exhaustive at all, right? Because you pick and learn and choose from different individuals in your life as you pass by them, right? Or as you work with them or have some kind of an interaction with them, right? Sometimes you go, this is exactly who I would like to be, or if I can bring in at least a little bit of that behavior, I think that's fantastic. And then there are some individuals you go, that is exactly what I don't want to do, right? So my style has changed through the years. Let's say, the individuals who have influenced me the most, obviously my parents. It's, plain and simple, wouldn't be here without them. So I think they were my first leaders, the first people that I looked up to. And then as I grew, as I went to grad school, there were some professors who were really impactful in shaping my worldview and my thoughts, right? So I think that was important. The third set of leaders, Jumi, I know you and I worked together previously. The third set of leaders were from that group of individuals. I just saw the enthusiasm that someone like John Miller brought to the work that we did, and it was fantastic. And learning from him and Delphin at the same time, I think those were two primary leaders that we worked for, right? And it was amazing because we got two different styles, but yet such an amazing place that we could learn from these individuals. I'd say outside of that, Jimmy, I learn from you every day, right? I mean, you're an amazing person, like the impact that you're having, not just from a work perspective, but also in the community is something that everyone should look forward to. And like I said, there are certain things that you pull from certain people. I mean, if I could communicate as well as President Obama could, right? Like I think that would be amazing. Take just small parts of the way that he communicates and bring that in. I think that's fantastic, right? A couple of different thoughts over there. More some on the technical leadership, some on the culture piece, and then some on the communication piece. So depending on where I find those individuals to be excelling, right? Like I try to bring some of that thinking into my own, and then have I guess created my own style.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing that because when I take a step back and look at how you led the team way back then, it was very inspiring and impressive for a number of reasons. We were all very young and we still are.
You talking about my hair, Julie? Come on.
No, no, no. I don't put words in my mouth. But then at that level, considering the complexity of the work that we were tasked with at that point in time and the volume of the work, we had an environment that you created which required a high level of excellence and accountability. But it also put into consideration the people aspect, the human aspect, the care. We worked really hard, but we also played really hard. I mean, to some extent. So, my question to you is how do you build or create a healthy team culture in a complex environment or an environment that has a requirement for high demand in terms of excellence, in terms of deliverables?
I think that's a great question, right? Like, I mean, I think we work in fairly technical, complex environments that are very demanding all the time, right? And I think there's a couple different things that I've found to be helpful. One, having clear goals, right? Sometimes the goals are fuzzy, but being able to translate those fuzzy goals from the CEO to something that we can bring to the work that we do is important, right? So there has to be some correlation between those goals. So having clear goals is important. Number two, on the team, having complementary skills is important. Having diversity of thought is important, right? To your earlier point, right? We were in a very technical environment. Not everyone was just a computer science graduate, right? Like we had colleagues who had degrees in music, right? I think Jimmy, keep me honest here, you have a degree in physics. So we all came from different backgrounds, different thought processes, but that made us all better as a team. So having that clear goal was important, but then two, having complementary skills is important. The third piece is the accountability. You talked about high quality output as a team and having that accountability, everyone taking on that accountability and sharing it, I think is important. And finally, I think everyone has to see the value in the other individuals, right? So person X may have a certain role to play versus person Y, and that's completely okay on the team, right? But everyone has to understand what is the value that individual is bringing, because without that it's like you've got a team but you don't really understand why this person's on the team, and I think it creates friction points, right? So the more that you can get rid of that, I think the better it is. One last thing, every time that I've found high functioning, high performing teams to come together, they tend to have a purpose, right? And that purpose can be as a team or can be as an individual as well, right? And that's what makes work meaningful and fun. I think it's easy to say, well, all I do every day is type emails, get on a few phone calls, right? Maybe edit some Excel sheets if I'm really lucky and type out a few emails. But I think it's another thing to talk about the impact of the work that you're having, especially for us from a cybersecurity perspective. We are trying to protect the organizations that we work for. And that itself is a mission and a value that I subscribe to, right? We're trying to keep the bad guys out of networks, right? And if you align to that purpose, if you align to that mission, align to that value, then I think it helps each individual understand their role, but as a team also come together to solve a greater purpose.
That's really great. So, what I'll translate that into is start with the why. What's the purpose? Why are we doing this? And each individual finding meaning in that purpose and figuring out what piece of the puzzle they are to fit into the bigger picture. So, in just in light of that, right, when folks get to understand their purpose and how they fit into the bigger picture, how have you been able to help them derive the value or the impact that they're able to make and meaningfully contribute to the larger purpose. And I can use an example because I know working with you, one of the things that we had to do was assess applications. And that meant that each individual had to be very technical, and there wasn't a lot of, should I say, leeway in making errors, because that would lead to unexpected consequences, right? Because then these applications are exposed, they're not secure, issues are not identified. But in the mix of all of that, I recall we had a conversation when there was a situation where an application was tested and there were, for whatever reason, there were lots of issues that were missed.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that happened. And you said, Jimmy, let's have a chat. What's going on?
Yeah.
How you doing? And you framed it from the perspective of, is there anything going on that is leading to you not being able to fulfill your piece of the puzzle? So how have you been able to look at an individual on your team, understand their capabilities, and be able to still give them that grace to grow and to see the value in themselves that, yes, we can work together through this.
Yeah.
We can work together to resolve this. And it's not a blame culture. You're more like, how can I help? I'd like to hear a little bit about how you display that approach every day, because it was really remarkable way back then, because you don't see that individual as, oh, you failed and then you have to get dinged. It's more like, hey, let's grow through this.
I think the first thing is having empathy for the individual, right? Like we all are individuals. We wake up, things happen, such as life, right? And we bring that to work, right? And so the mistakes happen, of course they happen. I've made them, everyone's made them, right? Like no one's perfect. And then the third thing I would say is also taking a step back, like you said earlier, right? Taking a step back, evaluating, okay, if we made a mistake, how do we learn from it? How do we grow together from it? I think is more important than the mistake that happened, right? What I found is that teams grow and individuals grow when they learn from mistakes. If you keep having the same mistakes over and over again, that's not really helpful. But the way that individuals grow or teams grow from learning from those mistakes is that they have a culture that allows them to fail, to take risks and fail. And that's okay, right? In the example that you're talking about, right, you may have tried or you may have spent a lot of time like trying to find a very difficult to find issue, and hence we missed a couple of issues. And that's okay, right? Because you ended up spending and taking that risk and spending time on something that could have worked out amazingly well. It didn't in this case. It's okay. We'll figure out a way how to make it easier for you to take those risks in the future, right? So I think you've got to create a culture where somebody once told me this, right? It's okay to disagree. But it's not okay to be disagreeable. And I think that's one of the really important things that I've taken forward, right? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out what happened and address the root cause, and you move on so that you can solve the greater issue, right? And if you create a culture of fear that if somebody misses something, they're going to get dinged or punished, or the outcome's not going to be that great, I think it has the reverse effect on people, right? That culture then creates situations in which people are just afraid, they stop taking risks, and so they're never going to be more successful than they are today.
That's very helpful, because I believe that creating an environment where there is a level of psychological safety definitely is a breeding ground for innovation, because people know that it's okay to fail, but you can learn from it and grow. And you have the support to ensure that you are able to make the most out of that situation.
Yeah, yeah. I think, Jimmy, like there was, and I forget the name of the project, but I believe Google did some research on this as well. And I think psychological safety was like one of the highest things that they ranked on the list of the dynamic of high performing team. And I think team members have to feel safe to, like I said, take risks earlier, but also voice opinions and ask for help, right? Because if they're in the middle of something and they're unable to ask for help, they're not going to be able to be successful in the future.
That's spot on. So, digging a little deeper into the question I asked previously, how do you identify the creative genius in your teams? Because I know that over time that we've worked together, there are times you give teams interesting projects to work on and we're tasks to work on. And I can start with one. If you remember this book,
It's great.
yes,
Yeah.
you gave me a project. Go read this book and present on it to the team. But that's just one of the many things, you did when you were leading that group. You gave people stretch goals to just, hey, let's go do this thing. And it may not make sense at that point in time, but you had that vision, that futuristic vision of, okay, the art of the possible. Let's stretch the limits. What can we do? How do you identify individuals on your team? Or maybe you just, come up with these ideas and just dish it out to folks on the team and say, guys, you got to go do this thing and you grow and learn from it. I'd like to hear your thought process around looking at the skill sets of folks on the team. Because if you recall, you hired a lot of individuals that had no background, no experience in the work we were tasked with doing, myself inclusive. But you gave folks the opportunity. And there were lots of times where you push people in the deep end and say, hey, go do this, go figure it out. What drove that approach?
So I think part of it is I know that individuals, or I believe at least, that individuals can do a lot of things, right? Like they can overcome limits that quite often we set on ourselves, right? Like we come in to your point, right? Like you say something like, oh, well, I don't have training in this, I'm never going to get this role. I feel like if you are motivated, individuals will be willing to give you training and give you the grace, will allow you time to get trained up, but you have to be motivated, and finding that motivation really is key. And believing in the purpose of the team, I think, is key as well. To your example around reading books, right? Like I think the point of reading those books, I guess now I can probably share this with you. The point of reading the books was not to read the books, right? It was great that the team got together, but I think it provided for two things that only those individuals could do. One, we could learn from some of the best business books that were out at that point in time as a team. And then two, it gave individuals the opportunity to talk about something that only they knew about. If you went and you did the research and came back and talked about which great, and here's the five main things to take away, you were the one who was leading the discussion, right? Like you were there driving how that conversation went, which was in some ways the point of what we were trying to do, right? We were trying to give individuals space so that they have specific opportunities to present, to talk, to communicate, to know something about a technical topic that probably somebody else on the team didn't know about, right? So that was in some ways, in some respect, the point of doing that. Didn't matter what the book was, but I think it was more to help individuals grow and learn to believe in themselves a little bit as well.
I'll say that thanks to you, a lot of the leaders that have worked with me have gotten this book.
Well, I guess Jim Collins should pay me a little bit of royalty fee or
I
something.
guess so. I guess so. And the other thing also is that stepping into the opportunity working with you, I did not have any background in application security, but building that muscle to learn something new has been very pivotal to all of the roles I've had since that job. And every single role I've had has been an opportunity to do something new. But today, I know there's no role that I will take on that I will not be able to figure out just because you took that approach, leading the team and stretching us, right? And now we believe in ourselves and know that we're capable to really do anything.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank
you
you.
always had it in you, right? Like, I mean, I think it was just a question of making sure that you knew what you had, right? That's all that matters.
Yeah, but that's good leadership, right? Bringing out the best in the people that you lead. So you've done that in an amazing way. So thank you for that.
So I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I'm just glad I'm a small part of your wider journey, right?
Thank you, Rishi. So when you think about leadership, would you agree that leadership is hard work? And what moments of your leadership journey have made it worth it? All the hard work, all the stress, all the load. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Can you maybe share what really makes it worth it?
So, first off, I like to think of myself more as a servant leader, right? So I like to shift the attention away from me to the individuals around me, right? Because I think those individuals deserve to be in the spotlight. I'm just the person who's helping them get into the spotlight. I think that's one part of it, right? The second part of what makes it impactful or helpful, I'll say, is seeing other individuals shine, and number two, having an impact on the world, right? I think those are the two key things, at least for me, right? There's different ways in which different people have impact, right? I'm not the best spokesperson, I can promise you that, right? It doesn't matter what sport it is in, but here's a little way in which I can have an impact. So I'm glad I'm doing that, and the way that I do it is, by helping other individuals be awesome. So if I can have a little part in the great journeys that leaders have had, then I find that to be very rewarding.
And Rishi, when I think about interactions with you, I was just thinking today that I've known you for guess how long?
Oh my
It's
God,
not a
it's
trick question.
20 years. Right?
Approximately. And I was just thinking that one of the things that really stand out about you as a leader, and just tied to what you just said about you're really focused on shining the light on others, empowering others. But one thing I'd like to add to that is you really care about the people that you lead. Because not just for me, but for everyone on the team, you knew what was going on in their lives. You knew who their kids were, their siblings were, you ask questions about what's going on in their lives. I recall there was once you just walked up and say, "Hey, how are things with your family back in Nigeria?" Because you had seen in the news that there was something going on there. And I was like, oh, wow, Rishi, how did you? But that shows intentional care for the people in your care. And that sets you apart as a leader.
And that has to be genuine, right? Like
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to just ask a flippant question, right? Like, but it's of like, oh well, how was your weekend, right? Like that's a very easy question to ask, right? I think the harder questions are the ones that make people think, like, what specifically did you do this weekend that makes you happy? Like, what did you do with your kids, right? Like that was maybe slightly different than what you've done in the past, or what's going on. Look, all of us have histories and families and all of these other things, right? And there's world events going on at all points in time. So I think it's important to at least be aware of it and be aware of the important people in our lives and make sure that you're genuinely caring for them so that they know that there is a voice, right? Like, or at least a person that they can reach out to. Sometimes we get very disconnected as just as individuals, as society, and at least having somebody ask that question can make the difference between somebody feeling disconnected versus connected. I feel like that's an important, genuine trait of every leader in any walk of life, right?
So, just on that note, right? Because from my perspective and experience, I think you're really great at building relationships, managing up, managing down. And would you say that has helped you in having difficult conversations or trying to walk through conflict or pressure or resistance just because you've built that relationship? How has that factored in to your ability to successfully have those difficult conversations?
Yeah. And so the reason that to build relationships and trust, yeah, is to be able to have those difficult conversations when the moments are right. Right. You're almost investing in yourself for the future because you don't know when that is going to happen. Look, when everything's going fine, like everyone's happy and everyone's fine with it. I think it's when things are challenging, either within the team, outside influences, someone's not happy with the result, whatever else, right? That's when those relationships matter. and that trust matters because you have to have the ability to say, okay, I understand the problem. Let me try and understand your perspective on the problem. Why do you even think that there is a problem? Make sure that they understand your perspective on where the challenge lies, and then how do you solve for it together, right? So that's why you build that relationship and the trust, so that you're investing in you and your team in the future, right? Now, whether that's communicating, I guess, to senior levels of leadership, or whether that's communicating within the team, it depends on the situation. I, I have traditionally not relied on positional authority. I think relying on positional authority is needed sometimes. I get it, right? But I feel like developing the trust of the individuals to be able to achieve an outcome is much better when it's built on relationships and trust.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So relationships are key, and trust is important to be able to drive the right outcomes, especially when you're navigating difficult conversations or decisions, or when there's resistance, because you've invested time in building those relationships, and as a result have trust. It's easy to move the needle, hopefully in the direction that at least all parties are able to have their own expectations accounted for.
Yeah, but it also helps you see why a situation may be viewed negatively by somebody else, right? Because when you have a relationship, hopefully you're starting to understand their perspectives on the world as well, right? And building and understanding those perspectives helps you have the same lens as they do on a particular situation. Understanding that is helpful to drive the same kind of outcome that you're looking for.
Are an amazing leader. Like I've said, I can't say that enough. So, what are some recommendations you have for up and coming leaders in terms of resources, tools? I know that based on the conversation so far, it looks like a lot of your leadership style and the approach you take has really been based on observation and emulating attributes that you've seen in, I'll call them role models, right, that you've interacted with in the course of your career. But do you have any other resources that you can recommend
Yeah.
for up and coming leaders?
So, more than resources, I would say three things, right? Number one, don't be afraid to try new stuff, even though you may not fully know and understand it, right? I think too often as individuals, we self limit, right? Here we go, oh, I can't do that because X, Y, or Z, or whatever else, right? But I think if you can try stuff and then you're successful at it, you will know that you can do it. If you're not successful at it, you will know why you didn't do a good job at it as well. So I think that's number one, which is like don't be afraid to try stuff. Number two, understand yourself a little bit. Like this took me a little bit to get to, right? I like to think in terms of frameworks. Like I enjoy that, right? Like I look at a situation or I look at multiple repeated situations and like to think of things in frameworks, think of it in two, three ways in which a situation could have changed. That's who I am, right? But invest in yourself to understand who you are. And that takes a lot of self reflection, a lot of thought, right? There's plenty of resources that are out there to do that, right? And the third thing that I would say is be fluent or at least know about the latest trends that are occurring in a business as well as a cultural context, right? You can be amazing from a technology perspective, you can be amazing and you can have all the self thought or at least self have all the self reflection done. But if you are not fluent in the latest trends, in the latest thinking, you may agree with the latest thinking, you may disagree with the latest thinking, and that's absolutely okay. But being up to date is going to be important, right? Because that latest thinking is influenced on previous thinking that existed, right? And so that's how further along we are going as a human race, right? And so if you want to be hopefully a leader in the future, right, you want to know what the latest trends are, what the latest thinking are, and how do you get to the furthest edge of where we are from a human rights perspective.
So remain cutting edge, pretty much keep learning and be abreast of the trends in
Yeah, for sure.
society.
And don't
Right?
be afraid to try things, like I
Yeah.
said, right? I mean, are there books? Yes. So, like the Good to Great book that you referenced was obviously a classic. There's a, I think I have a bookshelf full of classics. And I think the question is like, how do you learn from it? Where do you reference it? And like, how does it help you think about a situation better? And then leveraging that, how do you build from that?
Okay, great. What do you do to ensure that you stay grounded? And what do you do in terms of making sure that you have the right support systems and structure to ensure that, you're aligned with your core values?
Yeah. The first part of it is what you said at the end, which is understanding what your core values are. And then the second piece of how do you get there? There's multiple ways, right? Like I think you don't need to be a leader in every facet of your life. I'm part of a community team, like a sports team or recreational team. I'm just a guy who comes and like does a few things and is perfectly okay because that's all that I have the mental bandwidth for. But I enjoy doing it, so I do it. So, but being a different part of that team that are other than the traditional roles that I've taken helps me also understand, hey, you know what, this is a fleeting moment in some way, shape, form, right? Like I have a role, I enjoy doing it, but that role is not forever, right? You can sometimes be a leader by absolutely not doing anything, but the bare minimum that is needed for the team to be successful, right? And so you show up in different ways. And so I would say that is probably one of the few things that I'd recommend every individual does is put yourself in different situations where you're not always just the person leading the charge. You are also sometimes just the guy who's showing up and yeah, doing enough to make sure that the team is successful.
That's great. It keeps the balance, right? So that's really an interesting perspective for sure. So when you think about the legacy that you'd like to leave as a leader and thinking about the individuals that work with you, interact with you, encounter you throughout their own journey, how would you want those individuals to feel after working with you? And what would you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question, right? And I almost think like it's a question that perhaps the answer changes to that in every time or every few years, right? If you'd asked me this earlier in my career, my answer would have been more from a technical standpoint. Oh, they came in, they learned something technically, and now they're going out and doing something better, right? From a technical perspective. At least at the current phase of life that I'm in, right? Like I would say it's that individuals believe that interacting with me, being a part of the team that I'm on, they were able to grow as individuals, right? That when they came out on the other side, they learned a lot of lessons, good and bad, right? That they're then able to take and translate to their own lives, right? So I think that's perhaps the biggest piece that I think of as a legacy right now. In 10 years, if you ask me this question, I don't know, Jimmy, my answer is probably going to be something completely different.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. I took the liberty of reaching out to an individual to provide feedback on their interaction with you and their thoughts about your leadership. So I'm going to read it, and
No,
you
this is like
you
live.
can guess who wrote it. It'll be a wild guess, but you can try. So it says, Rishi Pande was my team lead when I began my career in application vulnerability assessment at Citigroup. His leadership had a lasting impact on my professional development. Rishi helped me understand not only how to perform effective security testing, but why it matters. You talked about the purpose, right? See, that came through in that. But he said, yes, but help him understand why it matters, especially the importance of prioritizing high risk areas that have real organizational impact. He is deeply focused on building strong, forward thinking programs, going beyond routine execution to drive efficiency, innovation, and continuous improvement. Rishi has an exceptional ability to recognize talent and align individual strengths with team and program goals. We talked about that. His motivation and mentoring skills foster both confidence and growth. In addition, he is a strong communicator. You said, no, you're not great at presenting, but I disagree 100%. So I agree with this person. He is a strong communicator with excellent presentation skills and consistently provides thoughtful professional and personal support to his team. His leadership style creates an environment where people feel valued, challenged, and supported to perform their best. This sums up our conversation. This is really you, right? And we touched on different aspects of this as we talked the past 30 plus minutes.
Jimmy, that was amazing. Thank you for doing that. Right? Like honestly, I'm going to ask you later who this individual was, so I can tell them never to write that again. No, thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I was able to help you and help a few other individuals along the way as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rishi. It's been great having this chat with you. Thank you for making the time, providing your insights, and just for being an amazing leader who has made significant impact in the industry and in the lives of everyone that has worked with you and come across you in the course of their journey. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jimmy, for everything that you're doing. You're far too kind to say all those amazing things, but I'm happy to help in any way that I can. So thank you for spending some time and giving me the opportunity to talk to you.